Hello, my name is George Takianos and I'm a student with Vast Fitness Academy and I'm completing my practical task 2 for SISFFIT004, that unit. We're going to start with the joints, and the first joint that I will be describing or talking about is the knee joint. The knee joint, or the tibiofemoral joint, connects the tibia and the femur bones, allowing the motion of those limbs. This is the knee joint right here. It's formed between three bones, which is the femur, the patella, and the tibia. It's a synovial joint. Which is a movable joint, and the type of joint that of a synovial is a hinge joint, which means a motion in one plane means it allows the leg to extend and bend back and forth with minimal side-to-side motion. So this is where the knee joint is located. It's a connection of the femur or the thigh bone with the tibia, the shin bone, the patella, which is the kneecap. Okay, so the knee is the largest joint in the body, and it acts like a hinge, allowing the knee to flex. So this is flexion here. That's flexion, and extend, which is straightening the knee. That's it there. And that motion really helps make walking and running and climbing possible. The ligaments that connect the femur, the thigh bone, to the tibia are the anterior cruciate ligament, which is right here, the posterior cruciate ligament, which is found behind the knee, the medial collateral ligament and the lateral collateral ligament, and the patellar ligament, which are all basically on the side and just in the front there of the knee joint. And the motion that I'm asked to demonstrate is extension. So this is extension of the knee joint, which is basically straightening the leg. And that is the knee joint. The second joint, the second joint I'm explaining is the hip joint, which is right here. The hip joint, or the let's see if I can pronounce this, acetabulo-femoral joint, is the joint between the head of the femur and the acetabulum of the pelvis. That's the socket of the pelvis. The hip joint's primary function is to support the weight of the body in both static motion, which is right now where I'm standing, and in dynamic, which is walking or running postures. The major bones are the hip joint, which are the pelvis, and the pelvis is made up of the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis, and the femur. They're the major joints of the hip joint. The hip joint as well is a synovial joint, which means it's a movable joint, and it's a ball and socket, which is a multi-axial joint. So it connects the axial skeleton, this part here, with the lower extremity, which is basically the limbs, formed by an articulation between the pelvic acetabulum and the head of the femur, which is basically a connection of those two where they fit into each other. So the hip joint, which is a ball and socket, allows motion. I'll just explain these. So this is flexion of the hip joint, that's extension of the hip joint, that is abduction of the hip joint, and this is adduction of the hip joint. We can do external or lateral rotation, we can do internal medial rotation, and we can also do circumduction, which is a round motion. So this assists with daily movement like walking and sitting. The major tendons and ligaments of the hip joint: you've got the capsular iliofemoral ligament, pubiofemoral ligament, and ischiofemoral ligament, and the intracapsular, the transverse ligament of the acetabulum, the ligament at the head of the femur. Now the specification, or what movement do I have to do for the hip? It's flexion. So this is hip flexion. There we go. Just flex the hip joint, bringing those two parts of the body closer together. Okay. The next joint is the shoulder joint, which is right here. So the shoulder joint is the shoulder joint, glenohumeral joint, is a synovial joint. Like the hip, it's a ball and socket between the scapula, which is shoulder blade, the humerus, which is the upper arm bone, and I think the clavicle should be in that as well. Okay, scapula, the humerus, and the clavicle also connects that as well. The shoulder joint is formed by the articulation of the head of the humerus and with the glenoid cavity of the scapula, hence the name glenohumeral joint. The major bones that make up the shoulder joint are the scapula, which is the shoulder blade back here, the humerus, the upper arm, and the clavicle, which is the collarbone. They all meet here at the joint. Okay. The shoulder joint is a synovial joint, so ball and socket. Okay, so identify the location of each joint. Okay, so we've done that. The ball and socket shoulder joints move. Okay, so the ball and socket shoulder joint moves the humerus, the upper limb, and the arm. Okay, so let's just go through that. This is flexion of the upper arm. That's extension. This is abduction. This is adduction. This is internal medial rotation. That's external rotation. And this is circumduction of the shoulder joint. The major tendons and ligaments of the shoulder joint are the glenohumeral ligaments, the coracohumeral ligaments, the transverse humeral ligament, the coracoclavicular ligament, and the coracoacromial ligament. And this is circumduction. That is the motion of circumduction of the shoulder joint. And that is my video about the joints. Thank you for watching. Thanks.